Sam, thought I would just create a quick video showing you how you could use Wicked Block Builder as one way to create a quick icon button block. So Wicked Block Builder is a plugin that allows you to easily create your own custom blocks very quickly. So what I'm going to do is just click Add New Block. And I'll call this icon button. And I'll add, for now, just a single attribute to the block and call it image ID. And what this attribute will do is just store or track the ID of the image that we select for the button's icon. On this editor view, what you can do here is build the markup for your block. So for example, if we want our block to be a button, we can add an HTML tag, and we'll just change this to button. And I'll give it a class so that we can style it. I'll call it icon button. And then within the button, I'll add an image component, map it to our image ID attribute. So what this will do is when our block is loaded into the editor, it will output a button tag, and nested within the button will be an image component that will let us select an icon for the block. I've already created some styles, so I'll just paste those in, but basically these just are to make the block look a certain way. They can be, whatever you want. And this is completely optional. The styles could be enqueued through the theme CSS or whatever is preferred. So I'll just save the block, and we should be able to insert it into the editor now. So here's our button. I can select an icon. And that's what it looks like. If we look at it on the front end, it looks something like this. But we can do some other things as well if we want. For example, maybe we want to have the option of allowing the button to have just an icon or maybe also a label. So we could add another attribute for our label. And then we could add a rich text component, map it to our label attribute, and give it some placeholder text. I'll make it a span tag. And I'll just give it a class and call it label. So let's see what this looks like. Okay, so now we have a label in our block, or button. So we can do something like that. We could also add some options here if we wanted to choose between the two different styles, having an icon or not. So let's add another attribute and call it, I'll call it variation. I'll make the default icon. And then what I'll do is for the block sidebar, I'll add a panel, call it settings. And I'll add some radio buttons. Map it to the variation attribute, add some choices here. Icon with text. Okay, so now what we can do, actually I'll just load this in the editor. So here's our button again. We now have a settings panel on the block sidebar, and we have this option to choose between icon or icon with text. Doesn't do anything right now, but we can fix that. So I'll come back over to the editor view, and what we can do is add some conditional logic to our button. So for the rich text element or component that I have selected, I'm going to add a condition to only output it when the variation equals text. So, oops. So now if we look at our button, if we choose icon with text, now we have our option to put in some text. or we can just have the icon. Something else you asked about was the ability to add like an ARIA attribute for accessibility. So let's say, for example, you know, we want to add this option to only display an icon, but we still want it to be accessible. So since we have full control over the markup, what we could do is come back to the editor view and select our button, add an attribute, call it ARIA label, and then we could insert our label as the value for that attribute. So now if we reload our block here, so the label is I love custom blocks. If we change it to just icon, we'll look at it here. If we inspect it, we should see our ARIA attribute, and it's right here. Not sure how easy this is to see in the video, but it is right there. Something else we could do too is to make it a little bit easier is we could add a text field to the sidebar for our label. And I'm just going to add a condition to this as well that only displays it when the text option is selected. And so what this will do is, if we refresh here, oops, sorry, I got this backwards. I actually want to display that text field when it's icon, because what I want to be able to do is set the ARIA attribute when we're not displaying this text. So let's change the condition for this. Okay, so now if we look at it, okay, here's our button. Let's change the label to icon button. And so that's what basically the reason I did it this way is so that we can still enter in a label even when, you know, we're not displaying text in the button. And again, if we save it, reload, and look at it, we have our ARIA label that says icon button. So we're still keeping it accessible. One other thing we could do, I mean, we could do lots of things, but something else that might be useful is to turn on the background and text colors so that we can adjust those things for our block. So now after those are turned on, if we refresh and select the block, now we should be able to set the background color. And so there we have our icon button. Lastly, what you can do is after you've created your block, if you want, you can come back to Wicked Block Builder and you can export your block, icon button, whoops. And one of the options, if you want, is you can export it to a plugin. And what this will do is create a standalone zip file with your block that you can then upload to any site, even if it's not using Wicked Block Builder, and use that block. Thanks for watching.